Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Very special day today here in the live studios in Hythe, otherwise known as the Haven, in Kent, southeast England, just a stone's throw from the English Channel. We have 10 vacationers from Wales over here, brought by Gopal Roy Prabhu, visiting us, and I'm convinced that as I was speaking to them just now, that association with devotees who love to hear about Krishna is the most important thing in life. Satam prasangam mamavirya samvido. That the only way that you can actually relish Krishna consciousness is to hear in the association of devotees who really like to hear. That's it. So here we are, together again. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava. You'll find in verses 412 through 416 a stava, 5 verses, glorifying the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdipi Yusha Sarva Vivkaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kali Dvandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadhayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bhando Matsangin Madguro Mad Mahadana Mannishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chochata kara hanamucha gadachin mam premna rit kanta yokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, in the adventure, the ongoing adventure of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, in the 10th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we've arrived at the 64th chapter out of 90, by the way. There's 90 chapters in this canto. the story of King Nṛga. Once, the family members of Lord Krishna, such as Samba, Pradyumna, Charu, Bhanu, and Gada, all princes of the Yadu dynasty, went for a long picnic in the forest near Dwarka. In the course of their excursion, all of them became thirsty, and so they tried to find out where water was available in the forest. When they approached a well, they found no water in it, but on the contrary, within the well was a wonderful living entity. It was a large lizard, and all of them were astonished to see such a wonderful animal. They could understand that the animal was trapped and could not escape by its own effort. So out of compassion, they tried to take the large lizard out of the well. Unfortunately, they could not get the lizard out, even though they tried to do so in many ways. When the princes returned home, their story was narrated before Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna is the friend of all living entities. Therefore, after hearing the appeal from his sons, he personally went to the well and easily got the great lizard out simply by extending his left hand. Immediately upon being touched by the hand of Lord Krishna, that great lizard gave up its lizard shape and appeared as a beautiful demigod, an inhabitant of the heavenly planets. His complexion glittered like molten gold. He was decorated with fine garments, and he wore costly ornaments around his neck. How the demigod had been obliged to accept the body of a lizard was not a secret to Lord Krishna, but still, for others' information, the Lord inquired, "My dear fortunate demigod, now I see that your body is so beautiful and lustrous. Who are you? We can guess that you are one of the best demigods in the heavenly planets. All good fortune to you. I think you are not meant to be in this situation. It must be due to the results of your past activities that you were put into the species of lizard life. Still, I want to hear from you how you were put into this position. If you think that you can disclose this secret, then please tell us your identity." Actually, this large lizard was King Nṛga. And when questioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he immediately bowed down before the Lord, touching to the ground the helmet on his head, which was as dazzling as the sunshine. In this way, he first offered his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord. He then said, "My dear Lord, I am King Nṛga, the son of King Ikshwaku. If you have ever taken account of all charitably disposed men, I am sure that you must have heard my name. My Lord, you are the supreme witness. You are aware of every bit of work done by the living entities, past, present, and future. Nothing can be hidden from your eternal cognizance. Still, you have ordered me to explain my history, and I shall therefore narrate the full story." King Nṛga proceeded to narrate the history of his degradation, caused by his karma kanda activities. He said that he had been very charitably disposed and had given away so many cows that the total was equal to the number of particles of dust on the earth, stars in the sky, or drops of water in a rainfall. According to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, a man who was charitably disposed is recommended to give cows to the brahmanas. From King Nṛga's statement, it appears that he followed this principle earnestly. However, as a result of a slight discrepancy, he was forced to take birth as a lizard. Therefore, it is recommended by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita that one who is charitably disposed and desires to derive the benefit of his charity should offer his gifts to please Krishna. To give charity means to perform pious activities by which one may be elevated to the higher planetary systems. But promotion to the heavenly planets is no guarantee that one will never fall down. Rather, the example of King Nṛga definitely proves that fruitive activities, even if very pious, cannot give us eternal, blissful life. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the result of work, either pious or impious, is sure to bind a man unless the work is discharged as yajna on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. King Nṛga said that the cows he had given in charity were not ordinary cows. Each one was very young and had given birth to only one calf. They were full of milk, very peaceful and healthy. All the cows were purchased with money earned legally. Furthermore, their horns were gold-plated, their hooves were bedecked with silver plating, and they were covered with necklaces and with silken wrappers embroidered with pearls. He stated that these valuably directed cows had not been given to any worthless persons, but had been distributed to first-class brahmanas, whom he had also decorated with nice garments and gold ornaments. The brahmanas were well qualified, and since none of them were rich, their family members were always in want for the necessities of life. A real brahmana never hoards money for a luxurious life, like the Kshatriyas or the Vaishyas, but always keeps himself poverty-stricken, knowing that money diverts the mind to materialistic ways of life. To live in this way is the vow of a qualified brahmana. And all of these brahmanas were well situated in that exalted vow. They were well learned in Vedic knowledge. They executed the required austerities and penances in their lives, and were liberal, meeting the standard of qualified brahmanas. They were equally friendly to everyone. Above all, they were young and quite fit to act as qualified brahmanas. Besides the cows, they were also given land, gold, houses, horses, and elephants. Those who were not married were given wives, maidservants, grain, silver, utensils, garments, jewels, household furniture, chariots, etc. This charity was nicely performed as a sacrifice according to the Vedic rituals. But the king also stated that not only had he bestowed gifts upon the brahmanas, but he had performed other pious activities, such as digging wells, planting trees on the roadside, and installing ponds along the highways. The king continued, "In spite of all this, unfortunately, one of the brahmanas' cows that I had given in charity chanced to enter amongst my other cows. Not knowing this, I again gave it in charity to another brahmana." Oops. As the cow was being taken away by this brahmana, its former master claimed it as his own, stating, "This cow was formerly given to me, so how is it that you are taking it away?" Thus there was arguing and fighting between the two brahmanas, and they came before me and charged that I had taken back a cow I had previously given in charity. To give something to someone and then take it back is considered a great sin, especially in dealing with the Brahmana. When both Brahmanas charged the king with the same complaint, he was simply puzzled as to how it had happened. Thereafter, with great humility, the king offered each of them 100,000 cows in exchange for the one cow that was causing the fight between them. He prayed to them that he was their servant and that there had been some mistake. Thus, in order to rectify it, he prayed that they be very kind upon him and accept his offer in exchange for the cow. The king fervently appealed to the Brahmanas not to cause his fall down into hell because of this mistake. A Brahmana's property is called Brahmaswa, and according to Manu's law, it cannot be acquired even by the government. Both Brahmanas, however, insisted that the cow was theirs and could not be taken back under any condition. Neither of them agreed to exchange it for the 100,000 cows. Thus disagreeing with the king's proposal, the two Brahmanas left the place in anger, thinking that their lawful possession had been usurped. After this incident, when the time came for the king to give up his body, he was taken before Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, who asked him whether he first wanted to enjoy the results of his pious activities or suffer the results of his impious activities. Seeing that the king had executed so many pious activities and charities, Yamaraj also hinted that he did not know the limit of the king's future enjoyment. In other words, there would be practically no end to the king's material happiness. But in spite of this hint, the king, bewildered, decided first to suffer the result of his impious activity, and then to accept the results of his pious activity. Therefore, Yamaraj immediately turned him into a lizard. King Nṛga had remained in the well as a big lizard for a very long time. He told Lord Krishna, in spite of being put into that degraded condition of life, I simply thought of you, my dear Lord, and my memory was never vanquished. It appears from these statements of King Nṛga, that persons who follow the principles of fruitive activities and derive some material benefits are not very intelligent. Being given the choice by the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, King Nṛga could have accepted the results of his pious activities. Instead, he thought it better first to receive the effects of his impious activities and then enjoy the effects of his pious activities without disturbance. On the whole, he had not developed Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious person develops love of God, Krishna, not love for pious or impious activities. Therefore, he is not subject to the results of such action. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, a devotee, by the grace of the Lord, is not subject to the reactions of fruitive activities. Somehow or other, as a result of his pious activities, King Nṛga had aspired to see the Lord. He continued, "My dear Lord, I had a great desire that someday I might be able to see you personally. I think that this great desire to see you, combined with my tendency to perform ritualistic and charitable activities, has enabled me to retain the memory of who I was in my former life, even though I became a lizard." Such a person who remembers his past life is called Jati Smara. In modern times, there are instances of small children recalling many details of their past lives. My dear Lord, you are the super soul, seated in everyone's heart. There are many great mystic yogis who have the eyes to see you through the Vedas and Upanishads. To achieve the elevated position of realizing that they are equal in quality with you, they always meditate on you within their hearts. But although such exalted saintly persons may see you constantly within their hearts, they still cannot see you face to face. Therefore, I am very much surprised that I am able to see you personally. I know that I was engaged in so many activities, especially as a king, although I was in the midst of luxury and opulence and was subject to so much of the happiness and misery of material existence. I am so fortunate to be seeing you personally. As far as I know, when one becomes liberated from material existence, he can see you in this way. When King Nṛga elected to receive the results of his impious activities, he was given the body of a lizard because of the mistake in his pious activities. Thus he could not be directly converted to a higher status of life, like a great demigod. However, along with his pious activities, he thought of Krishna. So he was quickly released from the body of a lizard and given the body of a demigod. By worshipping the Supreme Lord, those who desire material opulences are given the bodies of powerful demigods. Sometimes these demigods can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, but they are still not eligible, or not yet eligible, to enter into the spiritual kingdom, the Vaikuntha planets. However, if the demigods continue to be devotees of the Lord, the next chance they get, they will enter into the Vaikuntha planets. Having obtained the body of a demigod, King Nṛga, continuing to remember everything, said, "My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Lord and are worshipped by all the demigods. You are not one of the ordinary living entities. You are the Supreme Person, Purushottama. You are the source of all happiness for all living entities. Therefore, you are known as Govinda. You are the Lord of all those living entities. You are the Lord of those living entities who have accepted material bodies and those who have not yet accepted material bodies. Among the living entities who have not accepted material bodies are those who hover in the material world as evil spirits or live in the ghostly atmosphere. However, those who live in the spiritual kingdom, the Vaikuntha Lokas, have bodies not made of material elements. You, my Lord, are infallible. You are the supreme, the purest of all living entities. You live in everyone's heart. You are the shelter of all living entities, Narayana. Being seated in the heart of all living beings, you are the supreme director of everyone's sensual activities. Therefore, you are called Rishikesha. My dear Supreme Lord Krishna, because you have given me this body of a demigod, I will have to go to some heavenly planet. So I am taking this opportunity to beg for your mercy. I pray that I may have the benediction of never forgetting your lotus feet, no matter to which form of life or planet I may be transferred. You are all-pervading, present everywhere as cause and effect. You are the cause of all causes, and your power is unlimited. You are the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Supreme Brahman. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you again and again. My dear Lord, your body is full of transcendental bliss and knowledge, and you are eternal. You are the master of all mystic powers, and therefore you are known as Yogeshwara. Kindly accept me as an insignificant particle of dust at your lotus feet. Before entering the heavenly planets, King Nṛga circumambulated the Lord, touched his helmet to the Lord's lotus feet, and bowed before him. Seeing the airplane from the heavenly planets present before him, he was given permission by the Lord to board it. After the departure of King Nṛga, Lord Krishna expressed his appreciation for the king's devotion to the Brahmanas, as well as his charitable disposition and his performance of Vedic rituals. Therefore, it is recommended that if one cannot directly become a devotee of the Lord, one should follow the Vedic principles of life. This will enable him one day to see the Lord by being promoted either directly to the spiritual kingdom or indirectly to the heavenly kingdom, where he has hope of being transferred to the spiritual planets. At this time, Lord Krishna was present among his relatives, who were members of the Kshatriya class, to teach them through the exemplary character of King Nṛga. He said, "Even though a Kshatriya king may be as powerful as fire, it is not possible for him to usurp the property of a Brahmana and utilize it for his own purpose. If this is so, how can ordinary kings, who falsely think themselves the most powerful beings within the material world, usurp a Brahmana's property? I do not think that taking poison is as dangerous as taking a Brahmana's property. For ordinary poison, there is treatment. One can be relieved from its effects. But if one drinks the poison of taking a Brahmana's property, there is no remedy for the mistake." The perfect example is King Nṛga. He was very powerful and very pious, but due to the small mistake of unknowingly usurping a Brahmana's cow, he was condemned to the abominable life of a lizard. Ordinary poison affects only those who drink it, and ordinary fire can be extinguished simply by pouring water on it. But the Arani fire, ignited by the spiritual potency of a Brahmana who is dissatisfied, can burn to ashes the whole family of a person who provokes such a Brahmana. Formerly, the Brahmanas used to ignite the fire of sacrifice not with matches or any other external fire, but with their powerful mantras called Arani. If someone even touches a Brahmana's property, his family is ruined for 3 generations. However, if a Brahmana's property is forcibly taken away, the taker's family for 10 generations before him and 10 generations after will be subject to ruination. On the other hand, if someone becomes a pure Vaishnava or devotee of the Lord, 10 generations of his family before his birth and 10 generations after will be liberated. Lord Krishna continued, "If some foolish king who is puffed up by his wealth, prestige, and power wants to usurp a Brahmana's property, he should be understood to be clearing his path to hell. He does not know how much he has to suffer for such an unwise act. If someone takes away the property of a very liberal Brahmana who is encumbered by a large dependent family, then such an usurper is put into the hell known as Kumbhipaka. Not only is he put into this hell, but his family. Not only is he put into this hell, but his family members also have to accept such a miserable condition of life. Whew. A person who takes away a Brahmana's property, whether it was originally given by him or by someone else, is condemned to live for at least 60,000 years as a miserable insect in stool. Therefore I instruct you, all my boys and relatives present here, do not, even by mistake, take the possession of a Brahmana and thereby pollute your whole family. If someone even wishes to possess such property, let alone attempts to take it away by force, the duration of his life will be reduced. He will be defeated by his enemies, and after being bereft of his royal position, when he gives up his body, he will become a serpent, giving trouble to all other living entities. My dear boys and relatives, I therefore advise you that even if a Brahmana becomes angry with you and calls you ill names or curses you, still you should not retaliate. On the contrary, you should smile, tolerate him, and offer your respects to the Brahmana. I know very well that even I myself offer my obeisances to the Brahmanas. You know very well that even I myself offer my obeisances to the Brahmanas with great respect 3 times daily. You should therefore follow my instruction and example. I shall not forgive anyone who does not follow them, and I shall punish him. You should learn from the example of King Nṛga that even if someone unknowingly usurps the property of a Brahmana, he is put into a miserable condition of life. Thus Lord Krishna, who was always engaged in purifying the conditioned living entities, gave instruction not only to his family members and the inhabitants of Dwarka, but to all the members of human society. After this, the Lord entered his palace. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 64th chapter of Krishna, the story of King Nṛga. All glory to Sri Krishna's devotional service. All glories to those who have enough intelligence to be wary of pious activities. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're at 751, and next chapter is a little long one, so we're going to stop here, our daily readings, and open up the channels of communication so that we will have reflections and discussions and anything that stuck out in your mind that you want to hear more about. Please be our guest. Yes, Rohini Nandana. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the reading. Wanted to ask about this principle that by usurping a Brahmana's property, the usurper and so many generations of his family members in the past even go to hell. And in my conditioned thinking, I could understand how he would go to hell. You know, I may be able to understand, okay, how his family members may go to hell because they're kind of connected with him. But I'm struggling to understand how would the previous generations of his family would go to hell, and what's the kind of principle behind that?
Well, you know, the material world is a place of action and reaction, and Krishna knows Vedaham Samatitani, Vartamanani Charjana, Vishani Jabhutani, Mam Tu Veda Nikashjana. He knows everything that's happened in the past, present, and future. Everyone is connected together. No one is disconnected. So the Super Soul knows everyone who's connected to who, and it's the law of nature. These are the laws of nature, and the laws of nature are very subtle, and there's lots more of them than we can perceive with our gross senses. And this is why Krishna is making such a big point about it, actually. You don't know, what the laws of nature have in store for you, or even for your persons that are connected with you. That's why very intelligent renunciants, they renounce all kinds of connections, so that severs those threads. Because all of us are connected together to our past through our minds. The minds are the subtle energy of the Lord, and that subtle energy carries the soul from one body to another. And so everything that we've done, felt, smelled, heard, tasted, touched, every sensual input that we get is all contained within the mind for as long as we've been in this material world. So that's a law of nature, and that's the way the law of nature works. All of us are interconnected, we're all codependent, even if we don't know it, and therefore we should know, first of all, that we are in a place of danger. Padam, padam, bipadam, natesham. At every step there's danger, and we should be very, very careful. And this this is the difference between Krishna consciousness and the karma kanda Vedic principles of pious life. In that way of progressing, because they do progress doing that, they have to not make any mistakes. And even in a Vedic sacrifice, if one person in the sacrifice who came and becomes displeased, the whole sacrifice is ruined. If you want to attain this position of Brahma, which is that's the biggest position in the world, in the universe, then you have to go through 100 lives without making one mistake in your duties. Then you can be eligible. That doesn't mean you get it automatically, but then you can be eligible for having a universe under your control. What to speak of a country or a family or a business or something like that. So, yes, it may seem unreasonable, but that's only because we don't know. The more you know, the more reasonable things appear. Just like a small child, his father comes in the room, little baby, and he touches the button and light goes on. My father's a mystic yogi. Maybe he's God. He said, let there was light, let there be light, and there was light. Or you see an airplane flying through the sky, and the little child, Daddy, how does it fly? How is that possible? It's so big, and why doesn't it fall down? And all those things, because they don't know anything. Therefore, they become bewildered by the simplest things. So imagine the laws of nature. The only way out, gentlemen, is to become fully Krishna conscious. As to your question also. The only way is to become fully Krishna conscious. Give yourself to Krishna. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. What does ma shuchaha means?
Do not fear.
Do not worry, do not fear. And the last statement of that, the last sentence of that purport, do you remember it? The last sentence of the purport of 16. What am I going? Read it. Yeah, sorry. That's why you hesitated. Maharaj, why are you not understanding the difference between the Gita? There is no difference between the Gita and the Bhagavatam because it's spiritual. You silly. Okay. Yes. Last sentence. One may be perplexed as to how one can give up all kinds of religious forms and simply surrender unto Krishna. But such worry is useless. So that's the result of knowledge, of real knowledge. And knowledge is so vast that none of us are going to know all those details and all those things. Therefore, the only safe way is to just, as I said yesterday, that I think I chanted that verse, Evam Janati Purushottama Yomam Evam Asamudo Janati Purushottama Sasarvavid Bhajanti Mam Sarva Bhavani Bharta. This is what it means if you actually accept Krishna, really, not just theoretically or, pretending to get something or someone or whatever, but you actually accept Krishna without doubting as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the knower of everything. You become the knower of everything. Because then Krishna will give you what you need when you need it in terms of knowledge. Yes, my dear Bhaktirupa.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for reading. I got
Pleasure is all mine.
Yeah, I gotta come clean in front of all the Vaishnavas. Last week I was having a tough morning, and I stole a Maha's feet from Dayalu.
Oh my God!
And he's a Brahmana, so
may you not become a lizard.
I'm lizard bound, like so.
Moving school first.
Yeah, like that. But I thought it's kind of crazy, like the.
There's a difference between a Vedic, ritualistic Brahmana and a pure Vaishnava Brahmana. They will always just immediately say, "You're completely forgiven."
It was amazing, sweet as
well.
Yeah. Simply wonderful. I was just thinking, like, those Brahmanas, they seemed a bit kind of ungrateful, isn't it?
This is the difference between a ritualistic Vedic Brahmana and a pure Vaishnava Brahmana. That's why our goal should be to become Vaishnavas. Because you may become a learned person, you become a Brahmana, then you become a Vipra, which is a really learned person, then you become a Vaishnava. Vaishnava Brahmana. So, actually, I mean, the truth is that you have to become a Brahmana to become a Vaishnava. But Lord Chaitanya is so merciful that in his line, you become qualified to do Brahminical activities like do sacrifices and chant the holy name and preach and do all these things just by the mercy of the holy name. But you have to chant without offense to get the full benefit of that. So it's like that. It's hard to understand. The laws of nature are hard to understand. What to speak of the spiritual laws, But Krishna consciousness is actually simple. The spiritual world is actually simple because there's only one thing: to please Krishna. And all the variety of things that are done, they're all done to please Krishna only, and therefore everything remains simple. But in the material world, there's so many things. You go to the high street, like Oxford Street or some big, huge, superstore, or whatever you want to call it. Millions and billions of things to buy, and you've only got enough money in your hand to buy one or two of them or three of them. So you go through life going through all these places and looking at all these things, figuring out what you're going to want or buy. It's how much anxiety people can have to be in. It's inconceivable. Therefore, it pays us to become pure Vaishnavas. Pure Vaishnava means anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma janavritam anukulina krishnanu shrilanam bhaktir uttama. Bhaktir uttama. Uttama means the ultimate level of bhakti, pure devotional service. No more desire for the fruits for oneself. No more tendency to speculate about what's true and what's not true. No more guesswork. And do pure devotional service to please Krishna means in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. Not just that I decide that I want to do this for Krishna and I give to Krishna, okay, here you go. You know, it's something I've done, I like it this way, so I'm giving it to you, now you have to accept it. No, that's not pure devotional service. You find out what Krishna likes, what he wants, and you do that. And the thing that he likes the best is what we're doing right now, at this moment. And therefore the atmosphere is so profoundly sweet and profoundly satisfying that all of those other things that are in our minds sometimes when we're in a material body, which you can't stop altogether, they all go away. And everyone can experience it all at once. It's amazing. It really is amazing. You have to think about it, though. You have to perform your devotional service thoughtfully, not thoughtlessly. If you perform devotional service thoughtfully, you will see for yourself just how profound it is. In the beginning, maybe it's just a little, and then more and more, and it never stops. It never stops getting better. It never stops getting more profound. And therefore, Prabhupada says, just give this one life. This is nothing, one life. We're thinking 100 years or 50 years or 60 years is a big deal. Every time Mahavishnu breathes out and breathes in, the whole universe comes into being, goes through all of its changes, which is 111 trillion, 80 billion years. That's the lifetime of Brahma. One breath in and one breath out. One breath out, one breath in. 111 trillion years, 80 billion years of our lifetime in this place. One time I was visiting Tamal Krishna Maharaj in Cambridge when he was doing his PhD there, and I was editing the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and at the same time learning from Jayadvaita Maharaj how to edit. And so he allowed me to stay there. He didn't leave hardly anybody because he had his mind fixed on what he wanted to do. So I would stay there and I would get as far away from me as I could in the house where he lived in, big house. And I would chant my japa. And then sometimes he would come storming into my room and get on my case because I was chanting too loud, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know. So one time after he did that, you know, I snuck into his office, you know, the night before after he took rest, and I made a little sign, and it said, "Don't sweat the small stuff." And I pasted it onto his computer screen, you know, so he couldn't miss it, you know. And he loved it. He came into me after he saw it. He said, "This is fantastic. I do this all the time. I'm going to leave it there, you know, up there, so I won't forget." So we're thinking, you know, a whole life of misery, or we see some accident where so many innocent people become, you know, either killed or maimed or disturbed in some way or another, and we're thinking, oh, this is not fair, because we don't know. We haven't seen, we don't know what we've done, what to speak of all. You look out into a busy street and you see so many thousands, and in some places millions of people, and behind each one of them there's a whole story. behind each one of them. It's a whole story. So yes, can't understand. But if you surrender to Krishna, actually surrender to Krishna, and hear these books with an open mind, honestly, and then you'll be able to understand things, not everything, not like Krishna, but you'll be able to understand enough about Krishna that you'll be able to be free and happy. Yeah. And not tend at all to blame Krishna for anything, because he knows what he's doing. And we are what does it say? Man is an architect of his own fortune, or something like that. Yes, Gauranga.
Hey Krishna Maharaj, I just wondered about how come that the king could fix his mind so, I guess, steadily on Krishna when he was performing karma kanda activities.
He didn't. He wasn't thinking all the time of Krishna, but sometimes he was thinking very intensely about Krishna, that he wanted to see Krishna. He wasn't thinking all the time. A pure Vaishnava is always thinking of that. Therefore, he's not doing any karma-kanda activities. But even that level of thinking about Krishna got him, saved him. So the lesson for us is, if you can't think of Krishna all the time, think of Krishna regularly. Chant your rounds every day. Yeah.
Why do we say that he was saved when he wasn't in the end liberated? Was it? He just came back to the higher planets?
Because that's where he belonged. That's what he wanted. That's what he belonged. That's where he wanted. He has to live it out. Even when you become liberated, there's a verse in the Gita, Naiva kinchit karomiti, yukto manyeta tattvavid. Anyway, forget all the Sanskrit, but the gist of it is that, I'll read it. I get it. It's always better to say the whole thing. I think it's 5, 7. 5, 8, and 9. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit. Pashan shrinvan spishan jigran ashnan gachan supan shwasan. Palapan visrijan grinan unmishan nimishannapi indriyan indriyarteshu vartanta ididarayan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So that's what the beginning of liberation is. This is not pure Krishna consciousness, but this is the beginning of liberation, where you can remember that the modes of nature are doing these things. We're not doing it. Prabhupada, I think it's in the 2nd canto, 2nd chapter, 30-something. Can't remember exactly the verse number. Anyway, he says the first he gives an exercise how you can, with your intelligence, understand at least, that you're not in control. First of all, you have to sit in one place and perceive that you exist. Do you exist?
I think so.
There are great philosophers that have come to the conclusion they don't. And then they lead people into oblivion, and sometimes they even drive their own cars off a cliff just to prove the point.
Can I use the bathroom?
Huh?
Can I use the bathroom?
Oh yes, sure, please. Sure. So now you've established that you exist. And then you analyze with your intelligence how many things are going on in the body that you have no control over whatsoever. You know, your nails, the fingernails are growing, your hair is growing, digestion, all the, I mean, it's a very complicated machine, the body, human body. How all the enzymes and different things are going to the right parts of the body to maintain the health and everything. Nothing to do. We're not doing any of that. And then if you go one step further and you look outside and you see all the things that are going on, and it's not, you're not doing that either. And you keep following that train of thought, that meditation with your intelligence, and you'll come to the point where there must be an intelligent being that's doing those things. It's just the beginning. It's theoretical in the beginning, but this is the way of meditation. And then it comes to the supersoul that there must be an intelligence within me that's different from me that's actually doing all this. Then like that you take steps and steps and steps if you take that path of speculating. But you bypass all of that by coming in contact with a pure devotee and listening to his teachings, Śrīla Prabhupāda, and your spiritual master, who represents Prabhupada, who represents Parampradana Krishna, up to Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and then you're given it. What is it? Can you hand me that little notebook there? Yeah, right there, you got it. Perfect, thank you. There's this one verse. I never can remember the Sanskrit. Mental block. But I wrote it down. Prabhupada says, to forget in the Kali Yuga means to forget to write it down. Nayam Atma, there it is. Nayam Atma pravachanena labhyo namedasa nabahuna shrutena labhyas. Oh no. Namedasa na bahuna shrutena yam evaisha vinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivinute tanum swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, or even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. So even you can't do it, but what you can do is to try sincerely and do all these things with the motive, with the purpose of pleasing Krishna, and especially by hearing about him, like we're doing now. Then he becomes so pleased, just the beginning, in just the beginning stages of this kind of hearing, you can taste special things. And then when he becomes very pleased, he takes up the cleaning inside. that means to such a person, only by one whom he himself chooses, to such a person he manifests his own form. So that means to become fully Krishna conscious, to become actually conscious of Krishna. He likes it, and therefore he chooses you, and therefore you get the intelligence by which you can remember him and go back to him. We stop thinking that we're the doer, but at the same time we use whatever small independence we have to choose the right things. We choose him, and then he chooses us. Then we can go back to Godhead. We can perceive these things for ourselves. But even before we get there, we perceive so much more than we can when we're in total ignorance. And how do you know that? Well, just look back to the time before you knew anything about Krishna, and just remember who you were and what you were doing, and what you thought and what you knew. Completely different. Completely different. Come in, come in. Gopal Roy.
I was reflecting how one can practice Krishna consciousness in any situation. Like even as he was a lizard, he could think of Krishna. And I was appreciating how even you could have a life full of suffering, but simply by thinking of Krishna, it seems you attain perfection. And I was also reflecting how the times that I've experienced difficulty and suffering in my life are probably the times where I've most sincerely called out to Krishna. And then as I was also reflecting how I think speaking for myself, I fall into the trap of maybe getting a bit familiar, a bit comfortable with my life. I have my routine, and then I was reflecting on myself that I lose that edge of real, sincere helplessness and desire to be with Krishna. And I was wondering,
could you hand me the 10th canto? I think it's the first volume and maybe the second volume. I need chapter 14. Yeah. You probably heard this millions of times, but hearing it like this in response to such a question in a room full of sincere devotees is another thing. Prayers by Lord Brahma to Krishna. 10:14:8. Tat tenu kampam susumik shamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam rid vag vipurvir vididandamaste jiveta yo muktis pade siddhaya bhak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father. One who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. The word susamikṣamana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. And therefore, the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. His devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home, back to Godhead. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words Daya Bhak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which in fact is a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. And there's another place where Lord Krishna says that when a person actually surrenders, makes the vow to a bona fide spiritual master, his representative, then he accepts that person. That's initiation. He accepts that person is as good as himself and protects him from that time on. So even though it seems like devotees fall down or this or that or the other thing, they don't ever forget Krishna. They can't. Even if they get covered over for the rest of this lifetime. Next lifetime, they start right where they left off. You know, those persons did you meet on the story that you read a little bit from the book, and he said, what language is this? You know, is it Greek? And then another person read the same thing. I've been looking my whole life for this. Give me that book here. What do you want? Right? It happens. Therefore, like I said before, there's many things that go on that contribute to every single thing that happens. And we are bewildered. But the more we serve, the more we try to serve, the more we try to chant without offense, the more we hear, the more we try to understand, over time, then we become capable of seeing more and more and more. And Krishna gives us the right words to say, right? Isn't it? Oh, it's 8:30. Oh, Hare Krishna. We got a little carried away over here out there. You all, dear ones who are out in cyberspace. So we didn't get a chance to hear your reflections tonight. But I'm absolutely sure that it's okay with you. Because you can tell, even from a distance, that pretty special moment, to be able to be with these devotees like this. And so I'll stop our daily readings tonight. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. And always remember that reading like this out loud in the company of like-minded devotees, it works everywhere, every time, every place. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and His eternal pastimes. Hare Krishna.
Hare